Sorry, were you waiting for me?
No, you're just in time, Camille. Welcome.
Oh, good.
And
Great.
you're here. Good, Camille.
Yeah, right. I just got back from then on.
How are the roads?
Okay. Summer driving conditions, thank goodness, because I planned to get back before dark. Didn't happen.
Good.
So
We'll continue our study. We've been looking at the Shema, and the Shema is in Deuteronomy. People have memorized what chapter and verses they are yet?
Chapter 7.
Deuteronomy. I have not
Chapter
memorized.
6. Isn't it chapter
25.
Chapter 7 is part of it in chapter 6, right?
Yeah, it does include parts of Deuteronomy. The very first part is in chapter 6. So chapter 6, verses 4 and 5.
Yeah.
So Mary and Scott,
Oh, yeah.
this is all we've been studying is these two verses for the past 5 weeks. There's a lot
In
here.
words I never heard of before.
So we've got in English, hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord of you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Now with the words that we've been learning over the last few weeks, so it's Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 5. Shema, which is the word for hear. Shema, O Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh alone. You shall ahava Yahweh your God with all your lev and with all your nefesh and with all your, what word do different people have in their Bibles for this one? Strength.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might. Might.
Mine has might too.
Might.
In Hebrew, it's meod. M-E with like an apostrophe O-D. Oh, meod.
And what is nefesh mean?
Nefesh. Does anyone want to summarize? Nefesh means a collection of absolutely everything,
Many
which is why
things.
it's funny to try to summarize it. Nefesh is your very being. So it's the essence of who you are, but it also means your body. It means your soul. It means everything. And it comes from the root word. So Hebrew is a language that's based on root words. And so every word in Hebrew has a root word. And the root word for nefesh is throat. And so that's used in word plays throughout the Psalms where it says like the waters are up to my nefesh, meaning like my soul is almost drowning, but it's literally saying the waters are up to my neck. So it's like in over my head would be the equivalent in English.
How
So
do
the
you spell it?
N-E-P-H-E-S-H phonetically. Yeah, so the nefesh it's more than your body. A reminder, in ancient Hebrew, there was no difference. There's no understanding of there being a difference between the mind and the heart. And there wasn't a separate soul. There was the body. It was all connected with one. And all your critical thinking came from your heart. All your emotions came from your heart. All your decision making came from your heart. There's no concept of mind. In fact, some of the places where it says mind, it's a multitude of other words being translated. Everything from your heart to your kidney might be the root word. Yeah. There's one that says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and your kidney.
Yes.
Because there's just not that concept.
Gretchen, when did they discover the brain and what it was for you? You know, when did that happen?
Oh, that would have been, so the brain would have been known by the Egyptians at this time because the Egyptians were doing mummification. But the Egyptians just tossed the brain. They didn't think it was.
So
good
that's what I
brain.
meant. But I mean, when did they know what the brain was, because anybody that opened up a head would see the brain, but when did they actually know that was the thinking?
Yeah, so Aristotle started to have some hypothesis that like the brain did some thinking, maybe, or that there were thoughts and maybe the brain did part of that, but it wasn't formed. That theory wasn't formed how we understand it until much later.
Okay.
Definitely wasn't understood as far as like the electrical impulses and things like that. And so, but that's kind of where around that period where you're starting to get the idea of the mind being connected with thinking. Before that, in this culture stream we're looking at, it's from the heart is where your thinking occurs. And so, and as far as Babylonians go, they were not doing like autopsies. The Egyptians were, Babylonians were not.
Mhm.
So they didn't have a concept of the spinal cord or the brain at all. So they didn't even, they just thought it was something, it was part of your head. They did know though, so there are in ancient Mesopotamian medical texts and Egyptian medical texts, there's the concept of a stroke. And they understand, they have made connections even way back that like head trauma would cause issues. But they didn't really understand why head trauma was causing issues. But they knew it was from the head trauma that it was causing an issue, and not always that it was just from a demon or a god or some outside force.
Yeah.
Although that was a very possible reason too, why they were exhibiting trauma issues.
All about the heart.
Does that answer your question, Joey?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then if we back up, lev, the word for heart. So this word for heart is even more than our understanding of heart. It's the physical organ. They knew the heart was an organ, and they knew it was important, but it's also our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, all of that is in with our heart. And then Shema is an important word, and Shema it means to listen, to hear, but it's more than that because it also is an action word, meaning to hear and act upon that. So a close word to us is to obey, but it's not blind obedience. So it's not like, do this because I told you so. It would come with, do this because you are seeing the heart of God, and by seeing the heart and will of God, you would be moved to do this, because how could you not follow through after hearing God?
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, we always listen with the ear of your heart, Benedictine.
Yeah.
That's basically how we describe it.
Basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if you think about with a little kids when you explain things to them. So when I worked at a daycare, I had this kid. He was a recurrent issue child. Again and again, he would do the same things.
Yeah.
And I'd tell him no. Finally, I told him no, and then he'd have to sit down with me, and we'd have to talk through why they couldn't do this thing and why it was wrong. And after twice of that, he never like misbehaved again. I don't know if he just didn't like our 10-minute conversations about why you shouldn't do it.
That's probably it. Yeah.
Shema is also to act, right?
It's the act. So it's that, but it's like with that example of that kid understood why he should not hit people. And so then he acted out of knowing why. And that's part of Shema.
Okay.
Very inclusive.
To know and to act.
To know and to act. To know at the core of who you are.
To love, to act.
So, and then Yahweh, this name for God, a reminder that is, it comes from both meaning to be and to will be. So like he is and he will be God is and God will be. So it's both present and future. So when you read, whenever you see the Lord in all caps, it's in Hebrew, it's the word Yahweh. And it's where we get, when it's being read in Hebrew in synagogues and things, they would just say Adonai, because you don't, and which is the word for Lord, because you wouldn't say Yahweh out loud, because you wouldn't say the name of God aloud. Mm-hmm. And so Yahweh is just written without any vowels, YHWH, Yahweh. The vowels for Adonai are like placed in the middle, which is as a memory reminder, say Adonai when you come here and don't say Yahweh. But that word makes a nonsensical word, which is Jehovah, which is where we get that word from in English for another name for God that has come about from translation misunderstandings. So this depth within this very important prayer, the Shema. So we've got, the other thing, ahava, love. Love too is similar to our understanding of love, but it also carries an action. So a lot of Hebrew words also carry the action with them too. That you would not just be, it's not just a feeling, but it's a verb where you're living out too. So Shema, O Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh alone. You shall ahava the Yahweh your God with all your lev, and with all your nefesh, and with all your me'od. So this last word, strength, might in English. This word does not mean strength at all, or might. What it means is actually—
Of course not.
Of course not. Some of them are similar. Heart, love, those ones we went through in one class because they were pretty similar to ours. Mm-hmm. But this word is actually an adverb, and it means very, or like much. Muchness might be a better English translation. Love the Lord your God with all muchness.
Muchness. Okay.
Your muchness. So this in the Shema is one of the only places in the Bible where this Hebrew word is translated as strength or might. One of the only places. Most other places it's translated as very, or like as an adverb, the adverb very. So let's look at some of those places. Any thoughts before we jump back to Genesis?
My footnote says here strength can also mean wealth or substance.
Yes. Wealth, strength.
With all your wealth.
Yes. And there we will get to that too. Okay. It was also in some ways it was being translated. So as we are learning, it's good to jump back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. Because not only is Genesis giving us the creation stories, but Genesis is defining all the Hebrew words for us as it's doing it.
Yeah. Everything.
So we look at some of this first usage of these words in Genesis. This is Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. Would you read yours?
Sure. God looked at all of this creation and proclaimed that this was good, very good. Evening came and morning followed, the sixth day.
In NRSV says, God saw everything that God had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. So the Hebrew word we're looking at, me'od, this is actually right here, the word for very. It's not the word for good. There's nothing about strength in here. There's nothing about might in here. But that word very is the Hebrew word ME'Od. So it's modifying the word good to say this is extremely good. It's even more than good.
How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Me'od.
Naod?
Me'od. It's got like a weird pause in it. All of Hebrew is pretty guttural. And this one at least doesn't hurt as much as some of those other ones. They're even more guttural.
Pain.
Jump ahead to Genesis 4, chapter 5.
What'd you say? Wait a minute. Will you do it again?
Chapter 4, verse
Okay.
5.
Oh, ooh.
So we have it here again. And it's not just being used for something that is good. So we have, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. So Cain was me'od, angry, and his countenance fell. Cain was very angry.
Oh.
So again, it's intensifying the word angry.
Does yours actually say very in it?
It says, mine says
Mhm.
very.
Yeah.
It's filled with rage
Yep.
and spirit.
Filled, that would be another
Yeah.
good one. Like to be filled all the way up. That's another good translation of this word too.
Filled. Okay.
So let's go forward. Genesis chapter 7, verse 18. So Genesis chapter 7, verse 18. The waters swelled and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. What other words do people have?
Is it the greatly then? That's
No, it's actually the increased here.
Increased.
So the waters swelled
Oh.
and me'od greatly on the face of the earth.
mine just says the waters rose and rose throughout the whole earth.
Mine has swelled and increased greatly.
Just repeated the same word.
Yeah, at least it's increased greatly. Those two words, I'm not 100% sure which one's being translated as which, because they might have
Right.
switched them around in the
They
translation.
might have, yeah.
But it's also the other word that's attached to that here is gabar. So it's me'od gabar, and gabar is actually a word for strength. So like when you think about strength,
They're real.
there we've got the word for strength right in here, gabar, and that's the root word, gabar. Hebrew also adds prefixes and suffixes on, and so the word, it makes the word sound different. And so it's like, it's strength, like the waters they increased greatly. They were very powerful. In other places, sometimes it's translated as they prevailed.
Yep.
The waters prevailed. Is that
Sure.
what you have, Camille?
Yep.
Could you hear?
The waters prevailed and greatly increased on the earth, and the ark moved about on the surface of the waters. So they prevailed and greatly increased.
Mm-hmm. So we've got the word for gabar in here, strength and
Mhm.
power, and then we have the word for very, the intensifier in here.
Okay, I thought meod was strength or might as well. It's not?
It's translated as strength or might in the Shema, and that's one of the only places it's translated as strength or might.
Ah, okay.
Most other places it's translated as very or much.
Okay. That clarifies it.
Sometimes you say that and you don't mean it.
No, and actually, I understand it, so something's wrong.
Let's go forward to 1 Samuel. So 1 Samuel chapter 11. So reminder, the best way to try to understand Hebrew words and how they understand what Hebrew words mean is they look at where are all the places they show up and how is it being used in all these different places it shows up. It's just like in English, words have so many different meanings within them.
Mhm. Chapter
So,
13.
Chapter 11.
I'm sorry. 1 Samuel chapter 11.
Yes.
Okay.
Verse 15.
Okay.
Does anybody want to read that? You don't have in chapter 11?
No. 1 Samuel?
1 Samuel chapter 11, verse 15.
No.
Oh, I have that. You don't
What do you have?
It
Read
ends
your
with
chap-
14.
Well, read 14 then.
Samuel said to the people,
Yeah.
come, let us go to Gilgal. Oh, hang on a minute. 15 has got a little tiny thing. I take that back. It's right after that. It's not as
Okay.
big, but it's weird because all the other, numbers are bigger and darker. And this is just a little tiny one that I would hardly even see. I don't know why it's like that.
Does anybody want to read chapter or verse 15?
I can read it. So all the people went to Gilgal and confirmed Saul as king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites held a great celebration.
Oh. So mine ends with, and there Saul and all the Israelites rejoiced greatly.
Greatly.
That's what I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
me
that-
too.
The
We'll
word for
add that.
greatly would be the same word that's in the Shema, the meod. So we
Gotcha.
have intensifying their celebrations, their rejoicing, their happiness. So here we have a word that can intensify all types of emotions, and not just emotions, but it's intensifying the power of the waters as it's being described too. And then we have, it's also sometimes used in the Bible, like it would be said twice, like meod, meod, meod. So like in Genesis, jumping back, chapter 30, verse 43.
30, verse 43. Oh,
Grew exceedingly rich and had large flocks and male and female slaves and camels and donkeys.
The man.
Yeah.
They didn't use Jacob.
so if we took Hannah's footnotes, filled, wealth, or substance, and they put the word exceedingly in front of it, so that also would be like meod, meod.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So exceedingly rich is meod, meod.
Mm-hmm.
Mine said immensely prosperous.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely rich.
Extremely.
Okay. Extremely rich,
You got
immensely
exceedingly
prosperous.
Exceedingly prosperous.
So that's a
Exceedingly-
male.
That's
Right.
funny. We're all these combinations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the reason why this means wealth is
Yeah,
and
that's right.
when was being translated into Aramaic, meod is used for the word wealth. It's translated as wealth into Aramaic.
Oh.
And in Greek, meod is translated as the word power or strength. And so we've got like this original meaning, but then we also have how is it being used in speech, and that's how the translators are also trying to translate it. But they're trying to translate, how do we translate this into Greek? We don't have the exact same word for this as we do in Greek, so what word should we use? So in Greek they chose words for power and strength, and in Aramaic, as they're doing translations, there's for people who would have been fluent in both, said, we don't really have a word for this, the closest word we think is wealth in Aramaic. So now we have in mode, we've got wealth, we have strength, we have very, we have this muchness that this muchness, this filling up, this muchness.
I'm never going to play Scrabble with you.
I am really bad at word games because I make up lots of words.
That is true.
Yeah, boggle's my favorite one to make up words on. I'm really good at it though, because I make up a lot of words and then I get about 25% of them as actual.
Is that a
words.
word?
We used to say in Boggle, if you could make them laugh, then it was a word.
Oh, okay, that's a good one.
That was
I like
the kid
that one.
version.
That's a good one.
So we're gonna jump. We've been because we're looking at the Hebrew words with the Shema. We've only really been spending time in the Old Testament, but I want us to jump forward to the New Testament to Mark, because Jesus quotes the Shema. The Shema would have been a very important prayer to Jesus as well. So Mark chapter 12, verse 20. So chapter 12 in Mark. Oh.
Chapter 12, verse 20.
Verse 20. Yes.
Interesting.
This is not right.
Oh, I was gonna say about 7 brothers marrying the one.
I think it's 29.
I think you're right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that didn't work.
Yes.
Oh.
It's definitely 29.
Okay. I'm like, how is she gonna get that out of that verse?
Mistype there. Mistype.
So is mind the one that was translated this time?
Yeah, so with all your the soul and mind, so they're she's trying to convey
yeah.
both of those. So it's like the nephesh
The form
was for the soul and the mind, because at this
Yeah.
point the soul and mind is being understood a little differently, and so they're trying to convey that term of nephesh.
And then does yours end with all your strength?
Mine does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heart, soul, mind, strength.
So the NRSV reads, Jesus answered, the first is, so this is, which commandment is the first of all? Jesus answered, and now Jesus is quoting the Shema. This is why this is so important to us. Jesus answered, the first is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. So we've got, there's a few things here with, I'm glad you pointed out the word mind,
Yeah.
because this word of mind
Added.
isn't in the Shema. Like if we,
That's the extra one. Yeah.
that's the extra one. Because
Yeah.
if we go back, if you hold your
I'm looking
finger
at it right
there, Hannah, will you read it from Deuteronomy?
here.
Are we
Oh,
back to
Israel.
Deuteronomy?
Hold your finger in both.
You are to love, mine says, you are to love Yahweh your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength.
Right. And so we have this extra one with all your heart in the, or all your mind in the one that Jesus says. So this word for mind, we are getting some overlap here with actually the word for the nephesh, but also we're getting overlap with me'od, okay? Because that me'od can also mean like your power, translated as power and strength, and that also encompasses the mind when we think of the word mind, as far as like our intellect and things like that, that is encompassed in this. And so, but it also could be encompassed in the word nefesh as well, your very being. So, which makes the one in Mark maybe a little better understood for us, because when we think of mind and soul, we kind of separate it, because we think of our intellect being in our mind, and our heart, sometimes our emotions, even though that also comes from our mind too.
Mhm.
And so having the mind and named might be easier for us to picture what's all meant by in the Shema. So keeping that in mind, how Jesus is quoting it, let's look back at Deuteronomy. We've got Shema, O Israel. Hear, O Israel, hear with everything you are, and out of your understanding obey, because of the love and understanding that you have, O Israel. The one who is and the one who will be is our God. The one who is, the one who will be alone. You shall love and act with that love. The one who will be and the one who is your God, with all your heart, mind, soul, being, and with all your nefesh, your body, your soul, your life force, and with all your meod, your muchness. So with each of them, as we're going through, it's getting larger and larger and larger, because what is not encompassed by muchness?
Yeah, that's true. Covers it all.
So in this Shema, this starter prayer, this commandment, because it's keep these words I am commanding you today in your heart, put it on your forehead, write it on your hands, put it on your doorposts, have it everywhere. And what is it that you need to encompass? You show Ahava, the Lord your God, with what? With like everything that is your thoughts, everything that's your feelings, everything that's your decision making, everything that encompasses your body and your very being. And if I missed anything, all of that too. All.
So don't leave them out of anything.
So don't
Right.
leave the Lord your God, the one who is and the one who will be, out of anything. But love, ahava, and Shema.
Mhm.
So that brings us to the end of our key words in the Shema. Any thoughts, questions? We still have, we've been watching Bible study. It's called the Bible Project, and they do a little 5-minute summary for us with pictures, which helps immensely.
Yeah.
And so we'll watch that too.
Okay.
But
No,
it's
this
not-
has been extremely valuable to a greater understanding of the force of this prayer, and how very important it was for them to be reciting it first thing in the morning. I have it on a little card, and this is such a mess right now, but I've been reading that just about every day, and this just kind of fleshes it out even more, adds a great deal more meaning to it. So I'm glad we went over this. Really glad we went over this.
And now that you know some of the Hebrew words in it, early on, when we started the study, I had you take this prayer and put it somewhere in your house to see it. Now I would recommend take this prayer and insert the words that you know in Hebrew and put it somewhere and read that regularly. Because now you know there's even more depth than there was is our English understandings. And you might hear something even new through that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like I mean, it's kind of like why is it so important? You know, what is the meaning throwing everything like that? And, you know, why do we need that today? And I think it's maybe, well, it's the meaning of the word. It's saying it and then living it, right?
Mhm.
Throwing all your love at God, so that you're throwing your love at everything God loves. So
Mhm.
it's a way of life, the Shema.
Yeah, I think that's key. Saying it and living it. There's
Right.
actually no distinction in the Hebrew words between saying it and living it.
Yeah.
It's like if you say it, that means you're living it.
You can say
But
like
if
throw my everything, but what does that
Mhm.
actually, you know?
I
Yeah.
think another sort of meaty bone to chew on is how this has shaped traditional Jewish life over many centuries,
Mhm.
and how they make decisions and how they view the world. There's much to chew on with that. I appreciate that very much. I'm with Camille.
Mhm. Mhm.
it's not just shaped Jewish life. We hear about the Shema mostly in Judaism, and but it shapes Christianity as well, because these are the two core commandments.
Yeah.
Upon this hangs all the law and the prophets,
That's-
is on what's said in the Shema,
Mhm.
and love your neighbor as yourself.
Mhm. Mm. Easy to say, sometimes hard to walk.
True.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, I suppose they just say, if you say it, then you got to walk it.
Yep. Yep.
You said it. You're committed now.
Yep. We're committed now.
Well, it's so interesting because the words have so much stronger meanings
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
before, you know, because you've got like Shema and love, and all these words are so much stronger.
Mhm.
They
Then
haven't
the
been
way we use
diluted
them
by
today.
advertising.
So much more depth to it.
Yeah, we throw the words out, you know, like, you know, oh, I love that picture, or I love, you know, this,
Yeah.
and the
Well,
heart.
Breakfast cereal.
ahava, the word for love, and it is used for like, I love that soup.
Yeah.
So it's also used that way too. In Hebrew, ancient Hebrew doesn't have as many words for love as like Greek does, where it's in the New Testament we have those different words for love. But in Hebrew, we have ahava. I ahava, my favorite soup, and I ahava Yahweh, the Lord my God.
Well, what about
So-
the word
Go ahead.
DOD?
Yes.
That's supposed to also mean love, beloved, or uncle.
Yes. That's it. So there are other words that convey love too, as well. Yeah. That one's I don't know. I feel like I want to study Dod more, because like it means uncle and it means love. And,
Oh,
and my beloved.
loving
And it
relationship.
means it's got so many different meanings too.
But the one that has a great deal of strength behind it is the ahava.
Ahava is tied with the action as well. So you would
Oh.
love and act.
Gotcha. Okay.
So much of it is hard to translate because the words don't mean the same. You know, you try to do it, you try to make them, but you know.
It's like with any language. It's like
I mean, yeah.
English. Try translating bless her heart.
Yeah.
Like how
Yeah.
many different interpretations does that have?
Yeah.
And reading the Bible, it's like reading somebody's text message, because we are not getting tone
Right.
when we're reading
The
this.
inside jokes.
Right. And it's even more like today's text messages, where you don't have punctuation, you don't have capital letters, you don't even
Right.
have spaces between the words. And that's how ancient Hebrew is being written. So it's like texting with an early teen.
Some of it's slang that you don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Some of it's slang. Yeah. And so we bring our biases to it,
Mhm.
but then it's trying to figure out how can we unwrap some of those biases so we can get even deeper into the meaning. And just even studying the Bible, even without knowing any Hebrew, you can get to some of those depths anyways. Like the Holy Spirit's at work even through that. And translations can capture some of it. But there's even more that can be captured, the deeper look.
It's just that you know that this stuff all is a prelude to the coming of Christ. And that's what this is, you know, the history behind it.
Well, and it's not just the prelude, it is the story continuing.
Yeah, like, right. Yeah. And that love was so great.
Yeah. In Judaism, an important part of Judaism is the asking of questions and the debating of what things mean too. And so that is how you express your faith. It's a wrestling with God is what one does. That you struggle with God, you wrestle with God. You may notice before I preach, sometimes I say in my prayers, help us to struggle with these scriptures, or as we struggle with these scriptures, because that struggling is in like an old ancient part of how we encounter scriptures. And that even in struggle, there's still mystery, there's still more that we have to uncover, there's still more, and we'll never hit the point where we know it all. And that is a good thing, because God is beyond us and always pulling us further into our faith.
You ever read a verse at one point and it has a totally different meaning that when you come back to it or you hear it someplace else, and it's like, how did I, like put footnotes in my Bible? This is what was going on at that time. And then I'm like, that's not what I'm getting out of it now. And it's the same words. Completely different situation. And I suspect that maybe it was on purpose. So that you could struggle.
Yeah, I think so. A good practice to do is to take part of scripture and read it in one place. Like say you read it at home, and then go to the state capitol and read it again. And go to the grocery store and read it there. And then go to the homeless shelter and read it there.
And then go to jail and read it there.
And you start to hear so many different meanings come out just by that different location.
Or even just sitting and reading it differently, emphasizing different words at different times, or reading it just differently, sing song, and just all at once, or pausing at different places. Sometimes that's very powerful, very powerful.
Emphasizing different words at different times.
Yes, yes.
Well, let's look at the Bible Project. They'll correct me on any mispronunciations that I did. My own struggle with guttural Hebrew.
For thousands of years, every morning and evening, Jewish people have prayed these well-known words as a way of expressing their devotion to God. They're called the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And as for you, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. We're going to look at the last word, strength. The Hebrew word is ma'od, and it occurs some 300 times in the scriptures, and it doesn't actually mean strength. There is a perfectly good word for strength in Hebrew, and ma'od is not it. In fact, the Shema is one of the only places in the whole Bible where ma'od is translated as strength. So what's up with that? The most common meaning of ma'od is very or much. It's what grammar nerds call an adverb, a word that comes alongside other words to augment their meaning. For example, in Genesis chapter 1, God looks at the world that he's made, and 6 times he calls it good. But then the climactic 7th time, he says it is ma'od good. That is, very good. Later in Genesis, in the story of Noah, the flood waters keep rising and they become ma'od powerful, or extremely powerful over the land. In the story of Cain and Abel, Cain wasn't just angry at his brother, he was ma'od angry. Or when Saul became the king of Israel, he was ma'od happy. So you can see why ma'od occurs hundreds of times in the Bible. It's a really common Hebrew word that intensifies the meaning of other words. Very this, or really that. However, biblical authors could use ma'od in ways that are unique. Like when they want to increase a word's force to total capacity, they'll say ma'od twice. So Jacob became ma'od wealthy with flocks and camels and donkeys and servants. Or the Israelite spies went to investigate the promised land and they say, the land we passed through is ma'od good. So it's pretty clear, ma'od doesn't mean strength in terms of muscle power, but rather very or much. So let's come back to the Shema, where people are called to love God with all of their heart, that is their will and affections, and with all of their soul, that is their whole life and physical being, and with all of their ma'od, that is with all of their muchness. And while that sounds kind of funny, you also kind of get it. If ma'od can intensify any word's meaning to total capacity, then this final thing that you use to love God isn't a thing at all. It's actually everything. Loving God with your ma'od means devoting every possibility, opportunity, and capacity that you have to honoring God and loving your neighbor as yourself. It's the most wide and expansive word in the Shema. Ma'od can refer to almost anything. Which raises one last and really fascinating point. Because this word was capable of many nuances of meaning, ancient Jewish communities interpreted ma'od in the Shema in different ways. So the ancient Jewish scholars who translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek, when they came to ma'od in the Shema, they translated it with the Greek word dunamis, that is, power or strength. This is the interpretation adopted by most modern translations. But if you look at the ancient Aramaic translations of the Hebrew Bible, you'll discover that these scholars interpreted ma'od to mean wealth. Money is a concrete thing that opens up all kinds of opportunities to love God by giving away resources. And when Jesus was asked about the most important command in Scripture, he quoted the Shema, and he used 2 words to unpack the meaning of ma'od. He said, love God with all of your mind and with all of your power. Both are human capacities that can be used to love God in an infinite number of ways. So, which of these interpretations of ma'od is right? Does it mean strength, or wealth, or mind? That's the wrong question. The word ma'od doesn't limit the number of ways you can show love for God, just the opposite. The point is that everything in a person's life, every moment and every opportunity, every ability and capacity offers a chance to love and honor the one who made you. It's a call to love God with all of your muchness. And that's the meaning of strength in the Shema.
I think you did a really good job of explaining that.
So there you have it.
Mhm.
Yes.
That was beautiful.
Shema is so beautiful and so central to Christianity
Mhm.
and Judaism.
To everyone,
Everyone
should
yeah.
be.
Mhm.
So so we finished going at this opening of the Shema, and Advent starts on Sunday. And so for next Monday, we're going to start looking at Hebrew words that are important to the time of Advent. So like hope, peace, those types of words. And so it'll be an Advent series that we do for the next 4 weeks. So in the homework for that is we're going to do, as part of Advent, we're going to do these Advent skits that go through the genealogy of Jesus, but in a much more interesting way than as you read the genealogy.
Yeah.
And Toby's going to be one of our actors. If anybody wants to be an actor, let me know. Hannah's going to be one of our actors. And they're
Very
short
exciting.
little skits.
Don't have to memorize it, do you?
You don't have to memorize it. Yeah, no, you don't
Okay.
have to memorize.
Then we'll do it.
But so I'm gonna send an email out to the Jesse Tree readings.
Hmm.
And so these are
Ah.
readings for each day that we are challenged to read through. And what it's going to do is walk us through the entire story of the Bible, is what the Jesse Tree does, with some key stories. And
What is it? Is it a book?
No, it's not a book. It's a collection of scriptures. So the Jesse Tree is kind of like an Advent calendar. It's a tradition like the Advent calendar. But for the Jesse Tree, what you do is you read a story from scripture, and then you could maybe draw or use a little ornament and hang it on a tree to show like that, to remind you about this story.
So where can you find the stories?
I'm going to email them.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I will email them all. You could write down your emails, and then I make sure I get them to you too.
Awesome.
And so I'll email it. The readings start on December 1st.
I almost
Um,
bought a Advent
this-
calendar.
This Sunday is Advent?
Yeah,
This
this
Good.
Sunday of Advent, November 27th. Isn't that
Yeah.
wild? This is the longest possible Advent, isn't it? I think so. We
It's
get the-
almost Happy New Year, because the first of Advent is the new year.
Yeah,
Yes, yes, uh-huh.
I gotta get
my-
through
I love that.
Thanksgiving.
It's one of my favorite days of the whole year.
I just have to get through Thanksgiving before I can think about Christmas.
Thanksgiving is first.
You get through Thanksgiving, and then it's the Christian New Year.
Right.
Skipped right over Christmas.
Nope, that's
I
first.
do have the turkey though.
Oh, good. Turkey.
I don't even know what we're doing.
I don't know.
I always like
Yeah.
that commercial, Butterball commercial. They pull up to the house and she goes, "Not a word if it's dry."
Oh.
Yeah. I like that one.